6 days ago, Eala handed the world number 3 a 6-0 set. 6 days later, she got one back. Same player, same hard court, same summer. And on Sunday night in Toronto, it took Belinda Bencic exactly 73 minutes to end the best run of Eala's life. 6-4, 6-0. 73 minutes. That is shorter than one episode of the show you paused to watch this video. Think about what disappeared in that time. A 7-match winning streak. A first WTA title. The first ever won by a Filipina. Wiped from the conversation in the space of an afternoon. Wins over Zheng Qinwen, Elina Svitolina, Naomi Osaka, Leylah Fernandez, and Jessica Pegula. All of it, the whole beautiful thing, gone before most of America had finished dinner. And here is what makes it strange. Because this was not a bad matchup. This was not a bad surface. This was not some inexperienced kid getting exposed by a veteran on a big stage. 6 days before Toronto, on a court just like this one, against a player ranked higher than Bencic, Eala lost the first set and then won 12 of the last 14 games. She did not fold. She was the one handing out the bagels. So what changed? That is the question. And I want you to sit with it for a second, because the easy answer is the wrong one. The easy answer is that Bencic is a Tokyo Olympic gold medalist, and she played a great match. True. Completely true. The Swiss was clinical, she was ruthless, and she deserves every word of credit she is getting this morning. But that explains the scoreline. It does not explain the collapse. Because something happened to Eala in the days before she walked onto center court in Toronto. Something that had nothing to do with Belinda Bencic. Something that almost nobody covering this match has mentioned, and that includes the people who were sitting courtside. There is a moment in the second set, at 5-0 down, 3 match points against her, where the entire meaning of this loss flips upside down. I am going to show you that moment, and when you see it, I think you are going to feel very differently about what actually ended on Sunday night. But if you think this video is about Belinda Bencic, you are going to be wrong. Because what really ended in Toronto started long before Toronto. To understand what happened on Sunday night, you have to understand what Eala carries onto a tennis court. She is 21 years old. She is left-handed. And she comes from a country that had never, in the entire history of professional tennis, produced a WTA singles champion. Not one. The Philippines is a nation of over 115 million people, a country obsessed with basketball and boxing, and until about a week ago it had 0 women's tennis titles at the top level. She left home as a kid to fix that. Manacor, Spain, the Rafa Nadal Academy. Thousands of miles from Manila, from her parents, from everything she knew, chasing a sport her country had no roadmap for. There was no Filipino player ahead of her to copy. No blueprint. No senior pro to text at midnight when the losses piled up. She was building the road while she was walking on it. And she started delivering early. At 17, she won the U.S. Open Junior Girls Singles title, the first Filipino player ever to win a junior Grand Slam in singles. Before that, 2 junior doubles majors. The Australian Open in 2020 and the French Open in 2021. Most kids with that resume get a nice pat on the back and a wild card or two. Eala got something heavier. She got a nation. That is the part American audiences underestimate about her. When Coco Gauff walks onto a court, she carries expectations. When Eala walks onto a court, she carries representation. There is a difference, and the difference is enormous. Every match she plays is a referendum on whether a Filipino athlete belongs at this level. Every loss gets framed as proof it was a fluke. Every win gets framed as history. You want to know how big that pressure actually is? Look at the Toronto crowd. Sobeys Stadium is in Canada. Bencic is Swiss. Eala is Filipina. And yet the stands were packed with Philippine flags, night after night, so loud that opponents were commenting on it in press conferences. During her third-round win over Katie McNally, Someone in that crowd shouted something to her that she could not stop thinking about afterward. They told her they wanted to be Filipino for the night. She repeated it in her post-match interview. It stuck with her. A stranger in Toronto wanted to borrow her identity for a few hours because of what she was doing with a tennis racket. That is not normal. That is not what a round of 32 match feels like for a player ranked 25th in the world. And if that moment landed for you the way it landed for me, do me one favor before we go further, because the rest of this story does not work unless you understand her. Subscribe to the channel, not because I am asking, but because what is coming at the US Open in 3 weeks is going to be one of the biggest stories in tennis this year, and I would hate for you to miss the setup. Now here is where it gets complicated. Because carrying a nation is a privilege when you are fresh. It is a weight when you are not. And by the time Eala walked out to face Belinda Bencic on Sunday night, she had been carrying that weight through the single most demanding 10-day stretch of her entire career. 5 top-level opponents. A final that had to be suspended. A flight. A new city. 3 straight 3-set matches. And an injury she barely told anyone about. That is the part almost nobody accounted for this summer. Because in the 7 days before Toronto, that weight got heavier than anyone realized. Let's rewind 10 days. Because what Eala did before Toronto is genuinely absurd. And I do not think most people have actually sat down and counted it. Washington, D.C. The Mubadala D.C. Open. A WTA 500 event, which means every round is stacked. Round of 32. She draws Zheng Qinwen, the reigning Olympic gold medalist from Paris. She goes down, she comes back, she wins. Next, Elina Svitolina, a former world number 3, one of the most stubborn defenders on tour. Eala beats her and gets a standing ovation walking off the court. Then the semi-final. Naomi Osaka, 4 Grand Slam titles. A player who has beaten Serena Williams in a US Open final. Eala beats her too, and afterward, she talks about how keeping her composure has been the hardest thing in her career and how that night was the first time it fully clicked. Then the final. Jessica Pegula, world number 3. And this is the detail that gets skipped. That final could not even be finished in one day. Rain, scheduling, whatever the cause, the match got suspended with Pegula leading 6-4, 1-2, and they had to come back the next day to finish it. So, Eala went to bed a set down in her first ever WTA final against a top 3 player and had to sleep on it. She came back the next day and won 12 of the last 14 games. 4-6, 6-4, 6-0. First Filipina in history to win a WTA singles title. First player from Southeast Asia to win a WTA 500. She jumped from number 28 to number 20 inches the world, the highest ranking any Filipino tennis player has ever reached. Now count the cost. 5 matches, 5 opponents, 4 of them elite. A final stretched across 2 days, 0 recovery time, and then, almost immediately, a flight to Toronto for a WTA 1000, the tier above the one she just won, where she is now seeded 25th and expected to back it up. She had a first-round bye. That was the last easy thing that happened to her. Round 2. Alicia Parks. Big serve, huge forehand. The same American who had beaten Eala at the Australian Open in January. 3 sets. 6-1, 4-6, 6-2. Eala wins. Round 3. Katie McNally. And McNally was not a soft draw either. She had just knocked out the Wimbledon champion, Linda Noskova, the 6th seed. 3 sets again. 6-3, 5-7, 6-4. 2 hours and 39 minutes, finishing late at night. So that is 3 consecutive matches in Toronto that all went the distance. Combine it with Washington and you get a player who has been on court almost every single day for over a week in high-stakes matches, against opponents who are all trying to end her run. And then there is the part almost nobody reported. In that second set against McNally, at 3-2, Eala hit a forehand return and landed badly on her right foot. She rolled the ankle. She called for a medical timeout. The trainer came out on court. She got treated, she got taped, and she went back out and finished the match. She said afterward it was nothing serious. Players always say that, but watch the sequence again. She was up 3 to 2 inches that second set when it happened. She lost that set 7-5. Something changed after the injury, and it changed inside the same match. So here is the question I want you to hold. How many players in the top 20 keep grinding? Through a full singles draw on an ankle they just rolled the night before a fourth-round match? And now the detail that makes it worse. She was also playing doubles. In Toronto. In the middle of all this, Eala was in the doubles draw with Venus Williams, a former world number 1, a legend, a partnership that would have been a headline on its own. And they played their doubles match right before her singles round of 32. They lost 6-4, 6-3, and went out early. But that is not the point. The point is that on a day when she was already deep into a physically brutal fortnight, she played 2 matches, not 1. So put the whole picture together. 10 days, 8 singles wins, 3 straight deciding sets, a doubles campaign stacked on top, a rolled right ankle, a suspended final, a new time zone, a new city, and a country back home refreshing the score every single morning at breakfast because Manila time meant these matches were happening at 8 inches the morning for them. That is the version of Eala who walked onto center court on Sunday night against Belinda Bencic, a Tokyo Olympic gold medalist who won this exact tournament back in 2015. And for a while, it was a real match. Eala won the toss and elected to serve. She held for 1-0. Then Bencic started attacking that first serve and broke. Bencic went ahead 3-2 with another break. And Eala answered immediately, breaking straight back to level it at 4-4 after Bencic double faulted on breakpoint. 4-all. Crowd roaring. Flags everywhere. For about 90 seconds it looked like the streak was going to survive. And then Bencic found her best tennis of the night. A couple of timely winners, a little bit of luck at the right moment, a break for 5-4, and she served the set out. That was the last competitive game of the match. Second set. Bencic broke immediately. Then held. Then broke again. Then held again. 5 games in a row. And Eala, a week removed from beating the world number 3, stood on the other side of the net at 0-5, staring at 3 match points. 0-5 down. 3 match points against her. And this is the exact moment where the entire story turns, just not in the direction you are expecting. Down 5-0. 3 match points. An ankle she had rolled 2 nights earlier. A body that had been on a tennis court almost every day for 10 days straight. Nobody would have blamed her for letting it go. Nobody. In that situation, in that scoreline, with a first serve landing at under 60% and a Cincinnati flight already booked, there is not a single analyst on the planet who would have criticized her for playing 3 quick points and shaking hands. She saved all 3. Let that sit for a second. At 0-5, with the match already gone, with nothing left to win and an entire stadium watching her get baggled, Eala looked at 3 match points and refused every single one of them. Bencic had to earn another chance in the next game to finally close it out. And I want to tell you why that is the most important thing that happened on Sunday night, because it flips the entire narrative of this loss. Here is the assumption almost every headline made this morning. 6-0 means she broke. 6-0 means the pressure got her. 6-0 means the fairy tale ran out of magic and the 21-year-old finally got exposed by a real veteran. That is wrong. And the last game of the match is the proof it is wrong. A player who has mentally collapsed does not save 3 match points at 0-5. A player who has mentally collapsed hits 2 return errors and gets in the car. What happened to Eala in that second set was not psychological, it was physical. Her legs were empty, her first serve was gone, and against a ball striker as clean as Bencic, that is a death sentence. But her competitive brain, the thing that actually makes her special, never switched off. Not for a single point. You want the cleanest evidence? Compare the two matches. In the Washington final, Eala lost the first set to Jessica Pegula 6-4, exactly the same as Toronto. Same margin, same story. She got broken late in a tight opener and went a set down to a top-ranked opponent. In Washington, she answered. She won the second 6-4 and the third 6-0. In Toronto, she could not. Not because she did not want to, because there was nothing left in the tank to answer with. Think of it like a race car in the final laps. The driver is still perfect. The reflexes are still there. The racing line is still there. The will to win is still there. But the fuel gauge is on zero. And when the fuel is gone, it does not matter how good the driver is. The car slows down and everyone behind you goes past. That is not a driver problem. That is not a talent problem. That is a fuel problem. Eala did not run out of belief in Toronto. She ran out of gas. And I am curious whether you see it that way. So tell me in the comments, was this a collapse? Or was this a player who had simply nothing left to give after the 10 days she just had? I read every comment on these videos, and this one is genuinely a split. Some of you are going to say a top 20 player has to be fitter than that. Some of you are going to say she should not have been in the doubles draw at all. Both are fair arguments. I want to hear yours. Because here is what that reframe actually means. Toronto did not expose a weakness in Eala's game. Toronto exposed the price of how high and how fast she just flew. Those are two completely different stories. And only one of them is a warning sign. If she had lost 6-4, 6-0 to Bencic in March, fresh, rested, at full strength, then yes, we would be having a very different conversation about her ceiling. But she lost it after winning 8 matches in 10 days, after beating an Olympic champion, a former world number 3, a 4-time Grand Slam winner, and the world number 3, after finishing a suspended final on a Monday and boarding a plane to another country. That is not a fragile player getting found out. That is a player who ran the tank dry, chasing history, and finally hit empty on the 8th match. And there is one more thing about that Bencic match that almost nobody has mentioned. Look at how the first set actually went. 5 breaks of serve. 5. Eala went down a break twice and broke back twice, including a break at 3-4 to level it at 4-4. She was not being outclassed. She was trading punches with an Olympic gold medalist right up until her body stopped cooperating. So no, this was not the night the dream ended. This was the night the dream sent an invoice. And once you see it that way, her entire last 18 months stops looking like luck and starts looking like a pattern. Look at the last 18 months and tell me Toronto was the story. March 2025. The Miami Open. A WTA 1000. The same tier as Toronto. Eala, ranked outside the top 100 at the time, walks into that draw and tears through the top 25. She becomes the first Filipino player in history to reach the quarterfinals of a WTA 1000 event. That was the moment the tennis world first said her name out loud, and the general assumption was that it was a beautiful one-off. A hot week. A fluke. Fast forward to the summer of 2026. Grass court season, which is supposed to be the surface where young baseliners get humbled. Eala wins the title in Birmingham. Then she makes the semifinals in Berlin, beating the world number 2 Elena Rybakina along the way. Then Wimbledon, where she becomes the first Filipina ever to be seeded at a Grand Slam, seeded 29th and reaches the 4th round. And in that run she beats Iga Swiatek, a player who has spent more weeks at world number 1 than almost anyone of her generation. Her grass court record for that stretch: 12 wins, 4 losses. Then the hard courts. Washington. The first WTA singles title in the history of Philippine tennis, beating Zheng Qinwen, Elina Svitolina, Naomi Osaka, Leylah Fernandez, and Jessica Pegula on the way. Number 28 inches, the world becomes number 20 inches the world. the highest a Filipino has ever been ranked. Now here is where it stops being a highlight reel and starts being data. Alex Eala's career record against top 10 opponents is 9 wins and 4 losses. 9 and 4. And 7 of those 9 wins came in 2026 alone. Swiatek, Rybakina, Gauff, Paolini, Osaka, Jung, Pegula. Read that list again. That is not a list of upsets. That is a list of the WTA Tour's actual hierarchy, and she has beaten all of it inside 8 months. And now I am going to give you the number that changes how you watch her play, because it is the one I have not seen anyone put on television this week. On hard courts, Alex Eala's career record against top 20 opponents is 8 wins and 5 losses. Solid. Very good for a 21-year-old. But against top 10 opponents on hard courts, she is 6-2. Read that one more time. She has a better winning percentage against the top 10 than she does against the top 20. That is statistically backwards. That should not happen. Players are supposed to get worse as the opponent gets better. That is the entire logic of a ranking system, unless the player is a specific type. Unless the player is the kind of competitor whose level is set by the size of the moment rather than by the quality of the opponent. That is what the number is telling you. Eala does not rise to meet good players. She rises to meet big matches. Give her a packed stadium, a name opponent, a night session and a nation watching, and she plays a completely different sport than she does in a quiet Tuesday afternoon second round. Now ask yourself, which tournament on the calendar is built entirely out of packed stadiums, name opponents, night sessions, and nations watching? It starts on August 30th in New York, and this pattern explains Toronto better than any tactical breakdown could. Because look at where she has lost this summer. She has not lost to the Giants. She has lost when her body stopped letting her be herself. Alicia Parks took a set off her. Katie McNally, ranked in the 70s, took a set off her and pushed her to 2 hours and 39 minutes. Bencic finished the job. Those were not talent gaps. Those were fuel gaps, and every single one of them came at the tail end of the most congested stretch of her life. Here is the other thing that fits. She has already proven she recovers fast when the tank gets refilled. After Wimbledon, she flew home to Manila, did a short run of appearances, got treated like a national hero at the airport and at Malacañang Palace, then came straight back to North America and won the biggest title of her career within weeks. Rest did not slow her down. Rest launched her. So when people tell you Toronto is a red flag, ask them a simple question. Which part of it is the flag? The 8 wins in 10 days? The rolled ankle she played through? The doubles match she added on top? The 3 match points she saved when the match was already over? None of that is decline. All of it is a player running at the absolute edge of what a human body can produce. And finally, finding the edge. Which brings us back to the question I asked at the very start of this video. Same player, same hard court, 6 days apart, 1 6-0 given and 1 6-0 received. What changed? Nothing changed about Alex Eala. What changed was how much of her was left. So no, the dream did not end in Toronto. And there is one number in the rankings that proves it. A number almost nobody in the media has mentioned this week. Here is the number nobody is talking about. Alex Eala has almost nothing to defend from this stretch of last season. In 2025, at this exact point on the calendar, she was not a seeded player deep in WTA 1000 draws. She lost in the first round in Toronto to Marketa Vondrousova. She had barely any points on the board from August or September. Do the math on what that means. Even if she loses her opening match in Cincinnati, she stays inside the top 20. Even if New York goes badly, she stays inside the top 20. Toronto cost her a tennis match. It did not cost her the climb. Not one place in the rankings is genuinely at risk here, which makes this the single cheapest loss she could possibly have taken all year. And it gets better, because the schedule is now doing her a favor. Cincinnati next, Then the US Open starting August 30th at Flushing Meadows. Hard court. Her best surface. The tier where she has beaten the top 10 6 times in 8 tries. And the tournament that gave her the very first title of her life when she won the girls' singles crown there at 17 as the first Filipino to ever take a junior Grand Slam. 4 years ago, she walked out of Flushing Meadows a junior champion. In 3 weeks, she walks back in as a WTA champion and a top 20 seed. That is not the end of a story. That is a circle closing. And there is one more thing worth saying, because this was never really about a tennis ranking. Those Toronto crowds were not there for a round of 16 match. Philippine flags packed into a Canadian stadium on a Sunday night. People shouting that they wanted to be Filipino just for the evening, an entire country setting alarms for 8 in the morning Manila time. They were not watching a tennis player. They were watching a door open. A country that had never produced a WTA singles champion has one now, and every kid in Manila holding a racket this week knows the ceiling just moved, which is why I do not think the celebration is finished. The Philippines gave her a hero's welcome at the airport after Wimbledon, and the president honored her at Malacañang Palace for reaching a 4th round. She has now won a title nobody from her country has ever won. If that homecoming happens after the US Open, it is going to be bigger than anything we saw in July. So maybe those 73 minutes in Toronto were not a full stop at all. Maybe that was just her body finally saying what everyone around her was too polite to say. That 8 matches in 10 days on a rolled ankle is enough. That the tank needs filling before the real fight starts. That there is a Grand Slam 3 weeks away and it deserves a version of Alex Eala who has actually slept. Because here is what I keep coming back to. She was 5-0 down, out of gas, out of the tournament, facing 3 match points. And she saved all 3 anyway. That is not a player whose dream is ending. That is a player who does not know how to stop. 4 years ago, she won the junior title in New York. On August 30th, she goes back. This time as a champion. This time as a seed. This time with an entire nation awake at breakfast to watch. So, the real question was never what ended in Toronto. The real question is what is about to start in Flushing Meadows. Tell me your prediction in the comments. First round exit or second week? I want to see how confident you actually are. And subscribe before the 30th, because we are covering every single match of her US Open run. And if this summer taught us anything, it is that you do not want to find out what Alex Eala did the next morning from somebody else.